Good morning and good Erev Shabbos. There's a famous story about Hillel the sage, about someone that came to convert and asked Hillel the sage that he wants to convert on one foot. And Hillel the sage told him, what you don't want done to you, don't do to your fellow. The rest is all commentary. And the basis of this powerful line that Hillel told this person who wanted to convert comes from this week's Torah portion. You have to love your fellow like yourself. And Hillel interpreted it in the basic term. The first thing you need to know is what you don't want others to do unto you, don't do unto someone else. Treat them the way you would want to be treated. Yesterday, the world woke up to a disappointing reality. President Biden, who's been withholding and pushing and pressuring Israel from going into Rafah for 4 months already, where the war could have been finished already, where Israel could have taken care of the last 4 battalions of Hamas and defeated them and ended up pressuring them into a hostage deal, and the world could have gone back to rebuilding Gaza and helping the people there. And for 4 months, the American administration has been pressuring Israel not to go in. And at some point, Israel realizes no choice because Hamas keeps on being empowered by this and making the most ridiculous hostage deal offerings. Israel went into Rafah. And President Biden said on CNN that if Israel goes in full scale to Rafah, he will withhold the weapons from Israel. And of course, it reminded everyone of the famous story when Joe Biden came as a senator to Israel and threatened Prime Minister Menachem Begin with the same thing. And Menachem Begin told him, we're not Jews with trembling knees. No one came to help us when 6 million were killed by the Nazis. No one came to help us when we tried to create the state of Israel. And no one will stop us from doing what we have to do. With or without your aid, we will get what has to be done. And that's what Israel has to tell the president now. Because President Biden, who I think in his heart of heart knows the truth and wants the truth, but he's letting himself be manhandled, as they would say, by an extreme, fringe but vanguard group of the left. And instead of standing up to them and speaking truth to hate, he's capitulating to these terrible terrorist sympathizers. And what President Biden has to remember is that he shouldn't expect Israel to do anything different than America or any other country in the world would do if they were threatened. And never mind that Israel is protecting civilians much more than America did when they fought ISIS in Mosul just 5 years ago. And Israel constantly is at the forefront of protecting civilians. Israel has no choice. This is a fight for our life. And Israel will do what it has to do. But America has to take those words from Hillel the sage, and President Biden has to take those words. Ma'adaloch le'isani, what you wouldn't want someone to do to you, don't do unto them. Instead of President Biden making it unequivocal and clear to Hamas that he will stand with Israel no matter what, and will make sure that they are protected, which would end up pressuring Hamas to make the deal. Instead, he emboldens Hamas. He emboldens the terrorists in Israel and the terrorists all over the world and those on the campuses to say, you know what? We could punch Israel more. We could kill more of them. And we saw this with the Eurovision last night. Yesterday, all the hate towards the remarkable woman from Israel who was competing, and yet she made it to the finals anyway. She came with grace and with love. We will never forget what happened on October 7th. And we will never forget that love your fellow as yourself and don't stand on your brother's blood is spilled. Pertains to us as Jews standing for Israel. And just in case anyone forgets how demonous and how terrible Hamas is and who we're dealing with, one of the most painful and remarkable stories I heard about October 7th is about a guy named Shlomo Ron, Shlomo Ron lived in Nachal Oz. And him and his wife Chana and his 2 daughters and his granddaughter were in Nachal Oz. And when the terrorists started coming and he realized what happened, he turned to his family and he said to them, Shlomo said to his wife Chana and his 2 daughters and grandson, you go into the shelter. I'll sit down here on the couch. When the terrorists come in, they'll see me. They'll think I'm the only one. And then they'll kill me and they'll leave you alone. And his family pleaded with him, no, come with us. And he absolutely refused. They went to the shelter. He took his cane and he sat down on the couch with no ammunition, no gun, nothing, just with a cane. Sure enough, a little bit while later, terrorists barged in. They saw an old man with a cane, with nothing else, and they shot him in cold blood and killed him. And for the next 12 hours, every terrorist that came into the house saw this dead man and thought that there was no one left and left the house and didn't kill his wife Chana, his 2 daughters, and his grandson, until 12 hours later the IDF came and rescued them. This is the atrocities that Hamas did. And this is the heroism of a Jewish grandfather with a cane, an elderly man, and the sacrifice he made for his family. We are not Jews on trembling knees. This is not 1939, 1940, and 1945. And no matter what those who hate Israel say, and no matter what they make the president do or say, we will go today in the morning. Israel's cabinet, war cabinet, unanimously voted to continue the operation in Gaza. Don't blame it on Netanyahu. It's Gantz and it's Gallant. It's the entire Israel. Every vote in Israel shows that all Israelis want Israel to finish the job because we want to be able to live safely in our country. So it would be good for President Biden to go and to think very hard that what you don't want others to do to you, don't do to others. Stand with Israel. Have the moral courage not to pander for votes that will actually hurt you, but to stand with the truth, because ultimately truth will prevail.